This is the Albert Sharp Model Portfolio Performance Report to June the 30th, 2020. In response to numerous requests following last month's video, I've expanded the analysis beyond 4 to see how we compare against 12 of our main competitors. I'm delighted to say that we still come out top in the vast majority of the categories, and in this video I'm going to explain how we've achieved this and why it is that this is no flash in the pan. Hi, my name is James Crocker. I'm a partner here at Albert Sharp. My main responsibility is the model portfolio service that we operate for financial advisors across the UK. And today I'll be talking about the models that we run on platforms such as Transact, Novia, Nucleus, Standard Life, Aviva, True Potential and several others too. We've got 10 risk-rated strategies that are run on a numerical basis, with 1 being low and 10 being high. So let's dive straight into the numbers this month. Now, those familiar with us will know that we use Asset Risk Consultants as our main benchmark provider, and we can see straight away that over the last month we're ahead against all the categories. Now, these benchmark numbers are the average returns of the 80 or so discretionary fund managers who supply their performance data each month. One of the benefits of this comparison is that it is net of management fees. So in that respect, it gives us a nice apples for apples basis for comparison. However, if you want to drill down and get a better insight into the story behind the numbers, going through the small print in the fact sheets, all of a sudden it starts to become very messy very quickly. Last month, it was hard enough with just 4 contributors. Now looking at 12, you have to keep an eye out for everything. There are lots and lots of considerations. For example, is the performance net of fees? If so, what are those fees? Are we talking management fees, custodian fees, both? And what is the magnitude of them? Is there VAT on this? Do you hold your own funds in the portfolio? If so, what are you earning in addition to the stated management fee, aka double charging? Does that charge hit the OCF? How is the performance measured? How have you dealt with issues such as dividend outflows or other distributions? Have you ignored them completely maybe? Did you have an open-end property fund that got trapped, got locked out? If so, how are you calculating the performance now? Is any of the performance simulated, for example? Is it back-tested, i.e. not true performance? I really could go on. Ultimately, it is doable. It's just very labour intensive, and I have every sympathy with anyone whose job it is to try and stay on top of all this. By the way, if you want me to share my findings, do send over an email and I'll send over my report. It'd be very interesting from my point of view to compare notes, and I'd love to hear any feedback. So my starting point was to separate portfolios based upon equity exposure. I could have used third-party ratings, but A, not all of them are rated, and B, there are a sufficient number of cases where these ratings are highly suspect, highly questionable. Some models, for example, are rated 7 out of 10, yet have a 90% plus equity content. So starting with our riskiest model portfolio in the speculative category using de facto's terminology here. We're looking at our model 10, AS10, that has 98% in equities and 2% in cash. Now with best endeavours here, all numbers are gross of charges, i.e. before management fees are applied. What we see here is that AS10 over 1 year comes out first. It's up 11.31%, ahead of fees of course, and the blue dots show the competitive firms, and as you can see, we're a long way ahead. To be fair, we have a little bit more equity exposure than some of the peers out there, and we have the advantage in a rising market of course. You may have spotted that there aren't actually 12 blue dots there, and that's because several really had a much lower weight in equity and therefore didn't make for a very good comparison. This occurs in several places throughout the presentation, throughout the analysis. Don't be surprised if you don't always see 12. Now the benchmarks here come with something of a warning because ARC numbers are net of DFM management fees, whatever they may be, and the IA numbers do not. So ARC numbers are always going to be dragged back although I reckon this is going to be somewhere in the region of 0.7% maximum per annum. So expanding this out to 3 years, we're nicely in front, and it goes to show the magnitude of the opportunity cost of a few basic decisions going against you here. You'd be a pretty unhappy punter if you've only made 10% over the last 3 years, even if that is after costs, when you find out that a lot of the others have made 20% and Averty Shov have made nearly 30%. Over 5 years, we're still nicely ahead, although the competition here is much closer on our heels, I note. I'm not going to go through each and every model, there just isn't enough time here. As I said, if you want to drill down and see all of this, by all means, ping me an email. I'll happily send over a short report with all the data in it. Instead, I'll highlight a few of the key slides that caught my eye here. And what I'm putting up here is the AES 8 over 1 year. This highlights really the disparity of equity allocations in the riskier portfolios. I guess what I found most interesting here, once again, was the presence of home bias. We've got 15% UK equity exposure in our AS8 model, with 29% dedicated to the US and 16% in Asia and the emerging markets. But in comparable peer group portfolios, it's not at all out of the ordinary to see at least a third of this in the UK, and emerging markets and Asia often below 5%. I think most notably though, there is a distinct lack of dedicated small cap exposure. Why? 2 reasons. Many DFMs worry too much about volatility and overlook the very persuasive evidence that small cap is a very valuable source of superior long-term returns. Now, on that, I can immediately hear the comeback. Well, the indexes don't show that, certainly not over the last 5 years. And I'd pretty much agree. So don't buy small cap indexes. In the US, you can see that the S&P 500 index, the red line in the chart here, has comfortably beaten the smaller cap Russell 2000 index, which is the blue line. Fine. The black line is the US Artemis Smaller Companies Fund. Now, admittedly, it's hardly thrashed the S&P 500, but it is ahead, and quite significantly at certain moments over the last 5 years. And over those last 5 years, we've happily held this fund, and it's up almost 120%. In contrast, let's now look at the UK. Similar the story, with the large cap dominated FTSE All Share Index outperforming the small cap index in blue, but the returns have been miserable. 15% for the all share, 5% for the small caps. However, for the vast majority of this period, we've held the UK Buffetology Fund. I talk about it every month pretty much. It's the black line here, and it's up 72% over the period. And it's fair to say the vast majority of that performance has come from the small caps. Or if that isn't convincing enough, what about the Gresham UK Microcap Fund that we've held for a long time now? Well, that's up 58% over the period. So in short, we think too few DFMs take advantage of the risk available and convert this opportunity into returns. The second reason is the erroneous perception of cost. Small cap funds tend to have a higher OCF, and it's much easier to present this proposition to a client rather than get bogged down in issues such as risk budget, passive versus active, or drawdown, let's say. The old tailor's phrase, never mind the quality, feel the width, jumps to mind here. We think that this issue is completely irrelevant if you can demonstrate that fund charges are more than covered by performance, and we've done just that. And in fact, I think this very simple point goes a very long way in explaining why we are so far ahead. Both the Buffetology Fund and the Gresham UK Microcap Fund have OCFs up to and above 1% over the last few years. It sounds a lot compared to 0.1% for a tracker, but not if the former gives you a return 2 or 3 times higher after costs. And really, you see this across the board. This is why in the balanced category, we have a 3-year return over 20%, not 11 or 12% or below, as most of the others do. I think another thing that comes out, which is difficult to convey on screen really, I guess, to a degree, is that our numbers seem to be strengthening. A close look at the table here clearly shows that the shorter term figures are improving, and we should start to see our portfolios pull away over the 5-year periods in the not too distant future, I suspect. One reason is the increasing availability of funds that we like that have become more recently buyable on the platforms. Now clearly the bigger the universe the better as far as we're concerned. Also, our investment process has certainly got tighter over time. We've definitely refined it and it's become more focused. I think it's fair to say that we're clearer now in our thinking than we were 5 years ago. There's definitely more precision in our criteria, I think. And so when I look at these numbers, it gives a degree of comfort and validation that we're going about this in the right kind of way. I mean, these numbers are amongst the best in the industry, if not the best. Nevertheless, the pushback we tend to get tends to be along the lines of, well, everyone has their day in the sun. To which I'd say, no they don't. They certainly do not, and a lot of these portfolios have been languishing in mediocre performance for years and years. Another line is, the only reason you're ahead is that you've taken too much risk. It'll come back to bite you. To which I'd say, no. Part of the reason we're so far ahead is that many of our peers are in the wrong stuff, and often for very misunderstood reasons. Cost being one of them, of course. And this safety in numbers, and it's a mentality that's basically an acceptance of mediocrity. Now we've already demonstrated that we can generate superior returns with lower levels of exposure to equities by picking simply the right funds. Besides, we've had our portfolios profiled by a third party and they don't think they're too risky. Don't forget that we're happy to state that our main objective is to top the league tables in terms of performance. It's amazing how few of our peers would openly say the same. So on that note, thanks for watching. If you want a copy of the report or you would like to hear more about what we have to say, by all means send me an email or contact one of my colleagues, Mark Atherton or Alistair Power. Their details are here. Don't forget to click on the subscribe button below. You'll be informed of the new videos upcoming, including the July report, in which I'll be talking about our nomination at the 2020 PAM Awards. This is for performance of one of our portfolios in the growth category. And the big question is, will there be more to follow? Watch this space.